What's going on, everybody? It is the one and only Midnight Q here. A special recorded late at night edition of our episode 40 Quack Experimental Podcast. Now, you may be wondering, Q, what's the deal? What's different here tonight? Well, it's pretty late. I'm pretty relaxed, a little bit tired, a little bit fatigued. And I was watching It Series 2. It Chapter 2, I should say. And it was so bad. I just felt the need to get away from it. Do what I wanted to do. Do something that would make me happy. And here I am. Of course, I am your boy, Midnight Q, as we descend into madness. Now, before we get any further and start on our proper topics and all for the night, I do want to mention one quick thing, and that is a quick little apology for anyone watching, because I'm sure, as you've noticed over the last maybe 2 or 3 episodes, in fact, I had a feeling 2 weeks ago when I was making the current episode at the time that something was off, and then last week when I was editing last week's episode, it really hit me at that point, and I want to apologize that I've been kind of all over the place, and I just haven't been myself in that regard. I'm just feeling a little off. It's harder to express myself. It's harder to enunciate what I want to do. It's harder to keep my train of thought and whatever. And that's down to just me being borderline exhausted. I've been working pretty much 8 months straight without a single proper break, with that being more than 2 days at a time, and it's finally catching up to me. That coupled with my recent promotion in the start of December, end of November, I don't remember exactly when it was, but it was in around there, and it's just been, the workload has been crushing me up until the start of this week. So, yeah, that's, I realize that I'm a bit all over the place, more so than usual, and hopefully that's going to be rectified soon. I do have some time off coming up, and I'm just going to relax for a week. I'm pretty much probably going to unplug from the internet for the majority of it. I'll still make a video here or there, and, well, we'll have like probably a bumper jumbo episode or that weekend, whenever it is, but that's for a whole other thing. So, my apologies to those of you out there that are affected by my hot messness, if you will. Now, having said all that, let's move on to our first little segment that we want to talk about. And this one is CES, the consumer see, there you go. I'm just all over the place. I can't even focus on it properly. The Consumer Electronics Show for 2020, held in, I think it's Las Vegas. Held in Vegas, I believe it is, at the start of the year every time, and this one being 2020. Fucking hell, I'm all over the place. But anyway, we see all the companies show off their good stuff, their not so good stuff, their proof of concept, their concepts, and just, well, other stuff anyway. Now, there are many, many different things that they showed off, various different companies and whatnot too, throughout this whole thing. I'm going to touch on a few of the more notable and few of the important ones, if you will. So first up, Asus and Nvidia have announced the new Asus ROG 360. That's the Asus Republic of Gamers 360. And this is a 24.5 inch monitor. I know, how small, right? It's 1080p. I know, 1080p, right? John Carmack called from over 2 decades ago. But the most important thing about this one, there's 2 important things about this monitor, really. One is that it is equipped with a proper real G-Sync module, which of course is far more important than just having a little regular G-Sync compatibility. But hey, this is Asus Republic of Gamers stuff, only the best. But the real meat and potatoes, the most important thing about this ROG 360 is that this monitor, this 24.5 inch 1080p monitor, has a very high refresh rate. In fact, it's now a new refresh rate that has never been done before on a PC monitor. This is a 360 hertz monitor. That means if you have the capable hardware and a game qualified enough for it, I guess, you can run games at up to 360 frames per second. Not 30 frames per second. In fact, 12 times more. Imagine that, console I was going to say console guys and console gamers at the same time. Imagine that, console guys. Your beloved 24, 27, solid 30 frames per second. Here on the PC Gaming Master Race, we have excelled and exceeded and just surpassed 60 frames per second for about half a decade now, consistently. The gold standard had been moved from 60 to 120 in maybe like 2014, maybe even 2012. Yikes. Hell, who knows, maybe you'll finally get a somewhat, maybe relatively more common 60 in the next gen. But anyway, back to what else we have here. Asus also announced a new monitor as well. It's a new flagship bad boy, replacing their old model from last year. This is the new Asus ROG Swift PG32UQX. Of course, this being their top of the line big bad boy. It is a 32-inch monitor. It is 4K native resolution, 144 Hz, and it has a new standard that they've come out with as well. It's not just G-Sync compatible because it has a real G-Sync module, but it's also what they deem G-Sync Ultimate because not only does it have 4K, 144 Hz, and HDR. So that's the big important one. It's not just regular HDR. It's not some shitty little display 400 one. It's not even display 600 or what is the VESA DisplayPort standard 600, whatever they call it. But no. It's not even the more common proper HDR10. This is the new, proper, real G-Sync Ultimate 1400 nits display. So you're going to get an even wider variety of colors in your high dynamic range and your contrast. It's powered mainly by 1152 mini LED zones. We don't have full details on what type of panel and all it is now, but I would assume it's probably an IPS panel powered by all these mini LED zones behind it to handle localized lighting or localized dimming and localized brightness and whatnot, hence the 1400 nits. Now, of course, this is a beast of a monitor, 32-inch and 4K, 144 Hz, proper G-Sync, proper new G-Sync Ultimate standard, and the huge 1400 nit HDR. That's crazy. Now, how crazy is that? Well, if you've seen the previous version of this monitor, that was €2,400. So this one is probably going to be about the same as the replacement. Overall, it's pretty much a beast. I would not recommend or consider buying this monitor for anyone out there, simply because current graphical and display technology cannot keep up with this. It cannot get anywhere near pushing this. And by the time graphics technology does get up to pushing this kind of thing, imagine, let's just say it's 2 years from now in 2022 when GPUs can still do that. Imagine the kind of monitor you can get in 2022, the brand new top of the line current one for €2,400. Imagine how much better that will be. That's why I don't usually recommend people jump for these straight away. It just feels like a waste. Imagine if you go into this with your 2080 Ti and how much you have to drop settings and play at 60 FPS or below and all. It just doesn't make sense to me. But overall, the technology and the improvements and the fact that Asus ROG are just beasts. Just beasts. But I will say they're not the only one putting out something good, because Acer have put out a trio of monitors. I'm not a huge fan of Acer. I usually associate them with some of the lower, cheaper end stuff, but obviously they do have some fairly high end stuff as well. But quality wise, I never really, even their high end stuff, I never really focus on it too much. But one of the more important monitors they have at the moment is pretty much like the Asus ROG Swift bad boy. It is a 1400 nit HDR display, 10-bit IPS, 4K, 144 Hz, G-Sync Ultimate as well, and just like the Asus version, 1152 mini LED zones. So as you would expect, it's pretty much very, very similar. This happened in the previous gen as well. Acer had a big top-end monitor similar to the Asus ROG version at the time, so it's pretty much hand in hand in this one. It is interesting to note that the Asus ROG one has not mentioned what kind of panel. I could not find it anywhere what kind of panel that it would be. I'm going to assume it's some type of IPS panel. But on top of that, the Acer one has gone out and said that it is an IPS display. I don't know if they're going to quote the 1 millisecond that some of the new IPS panels are out there, but of course they're reduced quality, reduced contrast, reduced brightness, boost modes, so it's not as good, and it's not real 1 millisecond. That's of course the big killer for IPS. Now, having said all that, okay, one of the other monitors they had too is a 38-inch 21.9 or whatever the mad resolution is. It's not worth mentioning in that one. I think ultra wide monitors just don't deserve the time of day or basically even to exist. But I will talk about one other one they have. Now this is a trend you see. It started really early last year when I started talking about it once it was announced that Nvidia announced these big format gaming displays, BFGDs they call them. And it's essentially a TV. Kind of. It has all the features and quality and processing and et cetera, that you'd expect of a PC monitor. So it's much higher end than you'd have than a TV, but it's a huge one. You'd have them from the likes of LG. You've got these big ones that are 65, 75 inches, stuff like that. But in this new series, Acer have launched a 55-inch version. Now, the most important thing to note about this is that the Acer 55-inch version, while too stupid in my opinion to use as a PC monitor, you could arguably use it as a TV, but it's actually an OLED screen, an OLED screen, an organic light-emitting diode screen. Now, for those of you who don't know out there, OLED is the first proper, superior display technology compared to plasma all those years ago. Because yes, LCDs are still catching up because it's just natively and inherently an inferior technology. So this one is OLED, so you're going to get those colors. But there is a bit of a... Well, you're going to get the colors, you're going to get the response time, but there's a bit of a questionable one now in a minute. Because this 55-inch display, the OLED one, is 4K, as you would expect. It would have to be. If it's OLED and it's 55-inch, it would have to be. It's 4K, but it's only 400 nit HDR. Display 400. That's very, very low, especially for an OLED screen, considering that they're natively a better technology for contrast, among other things. But contrast has been their big thing, their big draw on them. It has a 98.5% coverage of the DCI-P3 color space. Take that as you will. But it has no G-Sync module, no proper G-Sync module, but it is G-Sync compatible. Now, it also, as it is an OLED screen, it has a 0.5 millisecond response time, gray to gray, and a 120 Hz refresh rate via overdrive. So we don't know what it has as its normal one. Could be 60, could be 90, could be somewhere in between, but it has an overdrive mode for 120. Now, this, in theory, to many people probably sounds like a great idea and all that. But if you're familiar with technology, not just PC graphical displays, PC visual displays, monitors and whatnot, but if you keep up with TVs and whatnot too, this is actually a very poor attempt at an OLED screen. Sure, it's a 4K OLED screen. That within itself is great. You get the 0.5 milliseconds response time because, well, it's an OLED screen, as you would expect. The questionable refresh rate, the 120 Hz via overdrive, is very worrisome. The fact that for an OLED screen, it is only display 400 nit HDR, that's terrible. That's absolutely terrible for an OLED screen. It's ridiculously bad. It's bad to the point of why should anyone ever even buy this? And not only on top of that, but as a 4K screen with a high refresh rate like that, it has no proper G-Sync module. It is only G-Sync compatible. This monitor is 100% pointless in my opinion. And of course, it's 55-inch, it's OLED, it's 4K. It's going to be fucking expensive. So I just don't understand why this one exists, and it's more capitalizing or releasing stuff under the brand and concept of the big format gaming displays. When's the last time you've seen someone use one of those that wasn't provided it as a sponsorship? Your favorite tech channel, your favorite YouTuber who talks about PC gaming tech or whatever it is, maybe even your favorite gamer or streamer that has been sponsored by whoever. When's the last time you saw anyone buy or use one of these that wasn't provided to them? Exactly. But we can move on to our next one as well. And we have some Elgato stuff coming out here. We have the new capture card. So this is probably about like 600 capture card at this point. We have the Elgato 4K 60 S Plus. That's right, I had to read that so far. Now, there's not much to say about this too far, so this will be a quick little one. But what this one does is it captures 4K 60, as you would expect given the name, HDR. It is an external capture card over USB 3.0, which is great because primarily up until now you needed an internal PCIe version, say like my Elgato 4K 60 Pro. Pro, because it's not the Pro Mark II, which handles 4K 60. It's an internal PCIe card. So, yeah, it's more handy. It's a lot more convenient for many people as well. But it gets extra good, extra better, extra whatever, extra feature laden, if you will. Because not only does this one record via USB 3. Wow, I said via. That's weird. I usually say via. It's one of those nights, lads. It's one of those nights. But not only does this obviously record to a PC through USB 3.0, but it also records directly to an SD card without the need for a PC. So that's interesting to some people. I'm sure many people out there don't want to have to deal with all the extra software, all the other stuff as well. Some people just want to set it up real easy and just pop in a card, record. Don't worry about any issues or the computer not being good enough or whatever, and just do it that way. So if that's for you, then yeah, that might be good for you. This releases in Q1 of 2020. We have no price or proper availability on it just yet. Now, they've also announced what they're going to call the Key Light Air. Of course, what always happens is when I buy, not at launch, but when I buy an existing Elgato product, well, they usually come out with a new one straight away. I have my little Stream Deck there. They eventually come out with the Stream Deck XL, the one I basically was dreaming for in my mind. I buy a Key Light. They have this new Key Light Air. You see what's going on here. I buy my 4K 60 Pro a couple of little while later because, well, this one was obvious because it was on sale specifically for that. You know, like 2 weeks later they announce, oh look, the 4K 60 Pro Mark II. Not that there's any difference in it. It's not that it's any important for me. But this new one, this Key Light Air, it's basically a smaller, more almost portable version of the big key light we have here. It contains 80 premium OS RAM LEDs outputting at 1400 lumens, so it is a little bit smaller physically as well as what it can do in brightness as well as the type of, I won't say heat, but the type of light it outputs. It has an edge-lit design with 5 different layers of diffusion. It's controllable via Windows, Mac, iOS, Android, and the Stream Deck. And it includes a base compatible with any desktop setup. It's available on January 15th, so it's pretty much out very, very soon. And this one is more akin to like a desktop lamp. It's much, much smaller. It's still maybe like 2 foot high or 3 foot high, extendable on, of course, as well. But the idea is this one can just sit on your desk. My key light that I have here behind this monitor and camera it has a clamp and a vice grip kind of thing onto my desk. So it's a little bit different. It's a little bit easier and more versatile for many people for this new one, that is. So I can see where that would come in. Also, the fact that it is smaller and has less LEDs and whatnot too, will naturally come in as a cheaper option, which makes sense considering that the key light is fairly expensive for what it is. It's great, don't get me wrong, but it can be a bit expensive for some people starting out there. Also announced were the Ryzen Series 4. That's right, we barely even have Ryzen 3 CPUs, but we now have Ryzen 4 CPUs. We don't know a huge amount about these so far yet, because for all they showed off, they really only talked about laptop CPUs. So for now, from what I could find at the time of these notes anyway, all the Ryzen Series 4 stuff was what they called desktop performance and whatnot in a mobile and notebook CPU. Now, more of this, they said, going forward in 2020, and of course, they also teased at the same time that a high-end Navi is coming. But speaking of high-end Navi, this one wasn't from CES, but we did have some very, very potentially juicy news. So we may have finally seen the high-end Navi in action in some way, shape, or form through a leak. Now, remember, take this not just with a pinch of salt. Forget the pinch of salt. Take this with a giant, heaping, almost dangerous level bowl of salt with this one, just because, well, you'll see. So in a leaked OpenVR benchmark, there was an AMD Radeon TM, trademark of course, GPU listed. Now, this one was in there. There was no proper names or numbers other than that. It just said AMD Radeon TM. And then, of course, naturally, that was it for the video card. Now, all other AMD GPUs that were done with this OpenVR benchmark showed their proper model and all too. They didn't show up in the same way as just AMD Radeon TM. But the very, very important thing to note about this one is that when you look at all the benchmarks and the results and everything that it was returning, this mysterious AMD Radeon card was outperforming NVIDIA's best consumer-level GPU, the RTX 2080 Ti, by 17% in this benchmark. And if you don't know, pretty much all VR benchmarks tend to favor NVIDIA because of their software and the ability in them. Naturally, as we've known for the past decade plus at this point, NVIDIA just has superior hardware and software. But now, it looks like AMD might be putting up a little bit of a fight. Now, of course, we'll play devil's advocate here and we'll sit on both sides of the fence and look at it from both sides. This could, of course, be a test card, a prototype card, an early card, whatever, or even possibly an engineering sample. We don't know. This could turn out to be nothing. It could turn out to be something completely different that's not even a regular Radeon Navi-based GPU. It could be like a workload card or something different. We just don't know yet. It could be a test that could eventually go back to the drawing board and completely change, get considerably better or considerably worse. But it could also be early tests on the proper high-end Navi card that they claim is coming in 2020 at some point, like we talked about a minute ago when they teased it at CES. So again, we look at it from both sides there. Remember, number one, this could be AMD finally getting back into the game after over 10 years of having sixth-rate GPUs. And on the flip side, assuming this launches in mid-2020, well, there could be a bit of a problem. Because if this does launch in maybe mid-2020, then it will be 17% faster than a nearly 2-year-old GPU, which is likely about to be replaced very, very soon. And especially when you consider the new rumors and alleged performance metrics about the new NVIDIA or upcoming series and all that too, well, the new ones are tipped to be 50% faster than the Turing equivalents. So let's just call it RTX 3080 Ti will be 50% faster, if this is all true, 50% faster than the 2080 Ti. That's a huge performance jump. Typically, you're looking at maybe 10, 20, if you're lucky, 25 to 30% performance gains, let alone 50% performance gains in general. And of course, they have said based on the hardware, and again, take this all with the leaks as a big grain of salt, but if it's all true, apparently with the new hardware and the cores and all that are designed in there, you're going to see a massive improvement in the quality of ray tracing, and you're going to see a massive downgrade in the performance hit. Typically, when you look at games now, you might run a modern high-end game at 120 FPS, maxed out settings, without ray tracing. But if you turn on ray tracing, your frame rate is halved. Now, because of all of this, the new ones, you might get the added bonus performance as well. And then you might only lose a small fraction. You might not cut your frame rate in half as well when it comes to ray tracing. So that is something that's very, very interesting. Of course, we all know that from what AMD have said, their Navi-based stuff going forward is going to have hardware-enabled ray tracing. So we're going to have to see how all of that works. Of course, it's not the same as RTX, but it'll be a more open standard probably. And it might even work with just engine engine-based ray tracing instead of some specific proprietary one. Hell, it could even use the generic Windows DXR, so that could work too. Now, having said all of that, last thing to talk about in this little topic is that overall, this is a good thing if AMD can offer some competition. Even if it is in the worst case scenario of this, and it's 17% faster than a 2-year-old GPU that's about to be replaced, well, it still shows them catching up. It still shows them catching up big ground after such a long time. It will hopefully force Nvidia to properly innovate more than usual, because let's face it, Nvidia have done, everyone can shit on Nvidia for saying, oh, their next GPU is only 10% faster. They've done so much in hardware as well as software that it feels just so wrong to shit on them for it. They helped bring modern ray tracing up from stuff that was just used for pre-rendered films and images and whatnot too, that would take dozens of hours just to do a few seconds and frames of clips. And they've been able to implement it in a way, albeit sure at a lower quality, but still it does look very, very good, in a live action gameplay where they can do it 60 times per second. That within itself, when you talk about ray tracing, is an absolute astonishing achievement. I suggest you go back and look for my video about, if you want to know a bit more about ray tracing as well as all that, I suggest you look back for a video I made about, it was when Nvidia enabled ray tracing on the 10 series cards. I talk a bit more about ray tracing in that, as well as what ray tracing is, what it means as an achievement to be able to do it and whatnot. So it's a bit more in-depth too. But overall, this is looking promising. I realize this is all from AMD, but this is looking promising as well for the future of Nvidia cards and possibly even the future of competition in GPUs. Now, next up, we're going to talk a little bit about exclusives. Now, we're not going to talk about first-party exclusives. We're not going to talk about second-party exclusives. We're not going to talk about platform exclusives. We're not going to talk about third-party exclusives. We're going to talk about publishers, developers, but typically publishers, maybe even hardware manufacturers, and exclusive modes and exclusive DLC and stuff like that. Now, this has a couple of examples that we get into in a little bit, but typically we're going to look at it when publishers do it for the lulz, if you will. Sometimes they just do it for the lulz because, well, you've got the likes of, you know what, we're going to talk about that now in a minute anyway, but be it for developers doing it for whatever reason, or if it's paid exclusive modes and features and stuff too, the likes of, say, manufacturers and all would do, be it timed exclusive or permanent or otherwise, it's all bullshit. It should all be stopped, or the price should reflect the lower amount of content you're getting in there. Now, there's a couple of more noticeable and more higher profile games that have been doing this recently. A couple of them, which we'll talk about now in a second, will maybe rustle a few jimmies, but overall, the practice, no matter who does it, Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, Epic, God knows whoever it is anyway, if it's from the publisher side as well, it's all bullshit, it's all bollocks, and it all needs to stop. But some more interesting ones, really the one that prompted this video, or this segment in this video, is Devil May Cry 3. Now, I will freely admit I don't care about Devil May Cry 3, so I can't be salty about it, like some people will probably claim. But for Devil May Cry 3 and its upcoming Switch release, they've added in some new style change mode. I don't know the full details of it too, but it seems to be that you can switch between maybe two different combat styles. Maybe you can do it mid-combo and it might change the gameplay a little bit. But this is not going to be patched into any of the other versions. It's not going to be patched into the Xbox One version. It's not going to be patched into the PS4 version. It's not going to be patched into the PC version that in any of those that we know of just yet. Now, there is no real rhyme, reason, or talk about this. It's very, very strange. But this also echoes a sentiment recently about Call of Duty Modern Warfare, where the PlayStation 4 version has an exclusive mode for one whole year. And as you know, with Call of Duty, it is an annual franchise. So when the new one comes out next year, everyone will move on to playing that. And then that mode in this game will be available for Xbox One and PC users. So having said that, the price on all three platforms is exactly the same. So they're really just banking on you maybe buying it anyway because it's Call of Duty every year. And then, of course, they take all that huge bundle of cash and the huge money injection from Sony. Again, the price is the same. You're getting less content and features of your game for a year. Purposely done so that everyone will move on and forget about it. And of course, Dragon Quest XI is a noticeable example as well. Of course, the Switch port was about 1 year late and is vastly inferior in every single way, except they've added in a little bit of new content. Now, this new content is very marginal from what I understand. Everything I read about it, it's basically just one or two extra little side quests that tie up some character-specific lore stories, if you will. It doesn't seem to be anything major from what I understand. But the principle and point is the same. The PlayStation 4 users in Japan, 2018, when their game came... No, wait. It would have been 2017, actually, yeah. 2017 when it came out. All the other users, the PC and PS4 users, when it came out in 2018. And then, of course, you get the Switch version in 2019. I guess I understand that they had to do something for the Switch port because, well, let's face it, a 2-year late port with lower quality in basically every way, they still needed a reason to make people buy it. But again, overall, it's the principle and the point that this whole thing is just kind of shitty. And it needs to stop from anyone, from Sony, from Microsoft, from Nintendo, from just the publisher side of it as well. If they just do it for fun, if they just do it because they want to, or if they're doing it because they're taking cash for it. It all needs to stop. It's all some bullshit. Or change the fucking price if you're not getting the same amount of content. If you're selling someone a lesser featured game, make the price reflect that. Now, moving along, we got to talk about a little bit of a failure. This one's a little bit of a failure on not only my part, but, well, the fanboy parts as well. Now, at the start of this year, I resolved to try and distance myself from the fanboy communities more than I already was. As I mentioned previously in the other ones where I detailed it, I admit I would get bored sometimes. I would slide into the trending sections and whatnot on Twitter or fanboy websites or single platform websites or whatever. And I would purposely go looking for some of the bullshit they spout and the Kool-Aid that they hand out. And I wanted to stop. Didn't matter. This was platform agnostic because PS5, Sony, Xbox, and Nintendo, they were all bad at it. They were all pretty bad for it. But we've kind of reached almost peak memeism. I want to say that, but I just know by this time next week it's just going to be even worse. There's going to be something even worse. And as I mentioned as well, when a new console generation is coming out, especially because they're going to launch at the end of the year, this entire year is going to be absolute hell for anyone who can't stand the shenanigans and mismarketing and whatnot of the companies, as well as the fanboys. For someone like me, it's going to be absolute hell for a year. It's going to be rough. But when I said it reached peak memeism, this might be to do with two recent things. One was during CES, Sony made a big deal about announcing the PS5 logo. Now, I only have one response to this. As my boy, I believe it was Glenn Quagmire, said, But yeah, you see my point. Now, it's just so strange to me. They're making a big deal about this. The PS5 logo, which is arguably basically almost completely identical to the PS4 logo. Very, very similar to the PS3 logo. But again, it's a logo. It's 2 letters and a number. And people are losing their shit over it. Now, you could argue that it's marketing, viral marketing to get people talking and whatnot. You could argue that it's working because here I am talking about it too. But I'm not losing my shit over it. Or maybe I am in the wrong way. It's a fucking logo, people. Deal with it. It's not going to change the world. It's not going to change anything. And they make such a big deal about it as well. On Instagram, I believe it is. They posted on the official PlayStation one or the official Sony one the logo on Instagram as well. And they're using it as a metric. Like, oh my god, it's garnered 3 times as many impressions as the Xbox Series 1 or Sexbox reveal has in 2 months. And they've done it in 24 hours. Yeah, no one cares. It's ridiculous. You have these loser fanboys that bleed blue, sleep blue, claim that games are going to lose sales by going multi-platform. They're just beyond idiocy. It's ridiculous. It boggles the mind how these people can shill and corporate slave. They're that mentally weak and so owned. Completely owned. Inside and out. By these companies. It's ridiculous. But the Sony ones aren't the only ones to blame. The websites are out there too. The Xbox fanboys are out there as well. Because during CES, AMD showed off a 3D render of the Xbox. Because, of course, they're making the hardware inside it. And they showed something that hadn't been showed before when it came to the Xbox. Now, of course, this still technically hadn't been shown because this wasn't real, this wasn't legit. It was just an unauthorized 3D render. They showed the back of the console. And everyone started going absolutely mental for the physical ports on the console. The physical ports on the back of the console. We can all pretty much assume we have a generally reasonable good idea of what's going to be on the back of a console. Now, Xbox One had a HDMI input as well, which is probably completely gone. I can't imagine they would bother even keeping that. They want to move away from their whole one box Xbox One appeal and just go with a gaming one. So my guess is we're going to have the power connector. We're going to have a digital audio Toslink output. We'll have a HDMI output. That'll probably be 2. My guess is 2. USB at least 3.0 ports. You might have something like 3.1 or something on there too. Naturally, there'll be a gigabit Ethernet port as well. And, well, you might even see a USB-C port on there as well. And of course, on the front, I think they've already said they're going to have a USB-A and a USB-C port on the front. Or maybe it was just a USB-A port and the USB-C is just on the controller. But people, please calm down. These are ports. There's nothing to go insane about. Absolutely nothing. Will it have a display port? Probably not. I doubt it. Who knows? Maybe it will. Is that something to lose your mind over? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. This is ridiculous. This is the kind of thing I just don't understand. Why? Because obviously my brain is logical, it is functioning, it sees everything objectively, and I'm not a fucking idiot. This is going to be a rough year. Especially when the hardware is a little bit more shown off, and we're going to have the idiot websites out there doing their usual little reporting, where they say that it will take till 2025 for a high-end gaming PC to be as good as these consoles. let's rewind time and go down memory lane a little bit. I remember in 2013, mid and the start, and even late 2013, before the Xbox One and the PS4 launched, and you had pretty much every single gaming website out there telling you that it would take 4 to 5 years for even a top-end gaming PC to be as good as these consoles. My 2012 PC and sitting in my other room over there, yeah, that one built 1 year, over 1 year actually, before those consoles launched. Yeah, it still beats them in every single way. Not only does it play every game they do better in both ways, it plays them at a higher resolution, it plays them at a better frame rate, and it plays them at a higher quality, all at the same time, over 1 year prior. So yes, you can see why, to me, as someone who understands technology, someone who understands hardware, and someone who is a logical, objective, non-fanboy idiot, well, this year's going to be fucking hell. Now, sticking with stupid things from the Xbox camp this time, but for now, it's not fanboy stuff, at least not this segment all as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about the Xbox launch lineup. Now, so far we know basically pretty much nothing, officially at least anyway. But we do have one little bit of information that is very, very troublesome and very, very illogical to me at least anyway. So they have said that every single game that is going to launch on the Xbox at launch will be cross-generational. So every game will have an Xbox One and a Xbox version. So yes, there will technically be no Xbox exclusive games on the console in 2020 when it launches. Next gen only games are coming 1 to 2 years after launch. Let me reiterate that. For the first 2 years of this console, for the first 1 to 2 years of this console's life, you will not be able to play a game that you could not play elsewhere. Now, that will still arguably be the case going forward, because once the Xbox exclusive games do start coming out, exclusive, the non-Xbox One generation games, they will still be coming to PC as well, so you can still play them somewhere else, better in both ways. Quality, resolution, frame rate, yada, yada, yada at the same time. But yeah, you see my point here. So all the things you'll expect this year, all your FIFA, your Madden, your Forza, your Halo Infinite, Call of Duty, Assassin's Creed Ragnarok, etc., 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 they will all be cross-generational games as expected. So you will have an Xbox One version and you will have a Xbox version. Now, it's kind of a shame that you're not getting a proper next-gen game for your next-gen console at launch, something to properly showcase it. Not something like Halo Infinite, because naturally every game I listed there, with the exception of maybe FIFA and Madden, but pretty much every game I listed there will look and probably run better on your new console, but fundamentally, it's the same game. Now you could say, oh, that's just the argument with PCs and all. There's a big difference. There's a big difference. When you're jumping from a console generation, fixed hardware for 6, 7, 8 years, whatever it is, to the next one, you expect a proper, true jump. Not a jump from 2013 to what PCs were doing in 2012. So, yeah, there's a bit of a difference. Now, all you will really get is a slightly better version of an Xbox One game, because it's so disappointing. Because when you look at it, back in 2013, even Xbox One of the biggest joke consoles ever created, up there tied for worst console ever created, worst mainstream console ever created. Not tied with the Dreamcast, but tied with the Wii U. The Xbox is that bad. Even that, at launch, had a few exclusive games. Killer Instinct, Forza Motorsport, Dead Rising 3, to name but a few. I got a lot of fun out of Dead Rising 3. Played 2 races in Forza. Forza came free with my console, but I'm just not a racing game guy. But yeah, even Dead Rising 3 at least showed it off for a while. Granted, the game went multi-platform later, or at least went to PC. Yeah, that's still multi-platform. But the point is, you had next generational games that would show off stuff that your Xbox 360 had no chance of doing in any way, shape, or form. And you're not going to have something like that this way, because you're going to fire up your Xbox day one and you're going to be playing the same games that the Xbox One users are playing. They need to cut the shit out. They need to dump Xbox One from development as soon as possible and get going full steam ahead on proper next-gen titles. Now, conversely, or competitively, or whatever you want to comparatively, I can almost 99.9% damn guarantee you that the PS5 will have exclusive next generational games at launch. Even if it's only small ones. Even if you're looking at more shitty ones like Knack 3 or something along those lines. Hell, maybe they'll finally go out and make another Killzone game. Haven't done one of them since the start of the PS4. That was a launch title. Hell, that's the one that came with my PS4. But yeah, still, the point is, I can almost guarantee you, 99.999 repeating, of course, percent, that the PS5 will have exclusive next generational games at launch to showcase the new hardware you're buying, usher in the new next generation, the whole fucking point you're buying these new consoles. Or, well, by the looks of it, the whole point why you're buying a PS5 and not a Xbox, especially if you're Mike Ybarra. But anyway, hopefully they cut out previous gen development as soon as possible. Get rid of the Xbox One, get that floor raised, get that ceiling raised, get the next gen experiences out, get the proper stuff going, and that's when it will really pick up. However, how's it going to work with those remasters? We know that with backwards compatibility finally happening, just looking back at this generation and the sheer amount of remasters and everything, it could go either way next gen. It could go either way, and we're just going to have to wait and see. Now, as is the current meme going around, everyone has their game of the decade going on. There are so many different ones that released during all this time. Some of the Mass Effect games, probably not a good series to name drop. Dragon Age, again, probably not a good series to name drop. Some Halo stuff in there. Some, hell, even The Last of Us people put in there. That's getting a lot of praise and even coming out as game of the decade in many people's and many outlets. Game of the decade. But for me, thinking back, off the top of my mind, I can only instantly remember maybe a dozen, at most, and a lot of them would be recent, games that I vividly remember playing within the last 10 years. Strange list as well. Heavy Rain is one of them. Game of the year 2010, by the way, for me. Persona 4 Golden is another one. Think of it. That's very strange, isn't it? Dead Rising 3 is another one. Now, Dead Rising 3 is absolutely by no means in any way, shape, or form a contender for Game of the Year or Game of the Decade. But I do remember vividly playing it because it was an Xbox One launch title. It was the only real game I had for it at the time. Because I had Forza, it came with my console, but I didn't play it. Well, 2 races. One to check it out myself, one to show it to someone else. But there's only a handful of games. Doom 2016... Played a bit of Overwatch. That's really it. There's not much to remember. Zelda, Super Mario Odyssey. That's it. I'm starting to draw blanks on big ones. It's just not uneventful, really. So, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Game of the decade for me is not Destiny. It's not Destiny 2. It's not The Last of Us. It's not Mighty Number 9. No. You'll never see it coming. Or maybe you will see it coming. I know I can see the reflection of it. My game of the decade is Persona 5. Persona 5. That's it. Deal with it. And it's not on Switch. And never will be. But hey, that's it. That's the end of it. So, we'll round out with the best segment. Q, what's going on? What's up? What's going down? What's the dealio? What are you playing? Well, this week has been pretty much very, very uneventful. Company of Heroes has run its course. It provided a nice little refresher and a little bit of a break from RPGs, especially after just finishing Grandia for the first time recently, after, maybe 20 years of trying, basically. But now, I'm back. I'm ready for another RPG. Now, I'm not going to jump straight into Grandia 2. I'm going to go with Wild Arms. Wild Arms 1, back on the PS1. Now, I did a little bit of deliberating. Should I play it for the ease and convenience sake on the PS1 Classic? Or should I play it properly, in its best original form? And naturally, of course, I settled on its best original form. So I hooked up my PS2, changed all those options, fast disc read speed, smooth texture mapping speed, bust out my RGB SCART cable, and of course, I'm playing that bad boy on my PVM. Haven't started it just yet. It is all sitting there. It's all connected. It's all ready to go. But it's next. It's next. And that's basically it. I'm taking it very slow. I'm taking it very focused. When I'm playing them now, the retro games, one at a time. One at a time. I'm not spreading myself too thin. I'm giving each game my proper attention, my proper focus, what it deserves. And I'm looking forward to chalking Wild Arms off the list, finally, after all these years. It's another one of those games I've played multiple times. I've got dozens of hours into it each time, but I just stop for whatever reason. Not this time. Not this time. I'm looking forward to it. And who knows what's next. I'm going to go with something that's not an RPG, because I want to break up the monotony. Instead of playing RPG after RPG after RPG, it's nice to break it up. RPG, FPS, RPG, strategy game, RPG, something else. You know the deal. To keep the palate cleansed, to vary it. You know me, I'm a man of eclectic tastes. It's what I do. I don't care if she's Asian, if she's tall, if she's short, if she's black, if she's white, just as long as she's not a ginger. Well, there are some exceptions, but I'm a man of eclectic tastes in all aspects of my life. Now, having said all that, of course, we are done here for the Midnight Q edition of our 40th episode of the Quack Experimental Podcast. As always, I want to thank everyone for joining me through this little descent into madness that we do to, satiate my sanity in some different ways. So let me know in the comment section below any thoughts, feelings, opinions, whatever it is you have on anything we talk about here tonight. Of course, as always, let me know how I did on the video by hitting whatever appropriate button it is, be it a thumbs up or a thumbs down, whatever it is you feel gets your point across. Feel free to head on over, hit the subscribe button, and even ring that little notification bell. So, of course, you can be one of the few people that gets that notification every weekend when YouTube decides to possibly tell you about one of these glorious little episodes going up. And remember, until then, I will see everyone next week. But in the meantime, remember, winners don't play switchboards.